Good evening. You may have seen a shocking headline. Canada supposedly signed a $214 billion deal, allegedly at the expense of the United States. The story paints a dramatic picture of Canada stealing America's biggest trading partners, a narrative designed to provoke outrage and anxiety. But as with many viral rumors, the truth is far less dramatic. Tonight we'll break down where this $214 billion figure actually comes from, and why the real story is about misinterpretation, not betrayal. We'll trace the origins of the number, separate fact from fiction, and show how media literacy is more important than ever. Let's dig in and uncover the real facts behind the headline. Let's set the record straight. Despite what you may have seen circulating online or in some headlines, Canada has not signed a $214 billion international trade deal. There's no secret agreement, no backroom handshake, and certainly no massive economic pact of this scale that's been quietly inked behind closed doors. We went straight to the source, digging through official government releases, combing parliamentary records, and consulting with trade experts who monitor these deals for a living. If a deal of this magnitude existed, it would be impossible to hide. Yet, after thorough investigation, we found absolutely no evidence, no documentation, no credible reports, and no confirmation from any reliable authority. Think about it. A $214 billion trade deal would dominate global headlines. There would be press conferences, statements from top officials, and in-depth analysis from economists and journalists around the world. The story would be impossible to miss, not just in Canada but internationally. Yet none of this has happened. So, where did this eye-popping $214 billion figure come from? The number itself is real, but it's been plucked from its original context and twisted to fit a sensational narrative. It's a classic case of a fact being distorted to create a story that grabs attention, even if it's not true. This is a textbook misinformation tactic, taking a legitimate number and presenting it in a misleading way to make it seem like something dramatic has happened. It's designed to go viral, to spark outrage or excitement, and to spread quickly before anyone checks the facts. In reality, the $214 billion figure has appeared in at least three completely unrelated contexts: a provincial budget projection, a global technology industry forecast, and a proposed tax policy document. None of these have anything to do with a Canada-US trade deal, or any international agreement of that size. Not one of these sources involves a Canadian trade deal targeting the United States, or any other country for that matter. The connection simply doesn't exist. By carefully examining these sources, we can see exactly how unrelated facts and figures were stitched together to create a viral myth. It's a reminder to always check the facts before sharing sensational news. The most direct Canadian link to $214 billion is Ontario's 2024 provincial budget. Ontario announced $214.5 billion in planned spending for the year, covering healthcare, infrastructure, and economic development for its 15 million residents. This is a domestic budget, not an international agreement. Investments include $85 billion for healthcare, major hospital expansions, and the largest transit project in North America. There's also funding for housing and AI research. For those unfamiliar with provincial budgets, the number might seem massive, but it's simply the cost of running Canada's largest province. This is about local priorities, not global trade. Ontario's budget is the first clue in debunking the viral rumor. The second source of the $214 billion figure is a global tech forecast. Industry analysts project the worldwide data center construction market will reach $214 billion by 2030. This is a global trend, not a deal signed by any country. Both the US and Canada are investing heavily in data centers, with major tech companies building facilities across North America. Canada benefits from this boom, but so does the US. It's a shared opportunity, not a rivalry. Linking this forecast to a Canadian plot against the US is simply false. The real story is about technological growth and cross-border investment. This context shows how a global market number was twisted into a nationalistic rumor. The third context for the $214 billion figure comes from a recent G7 policy proposal that's been making headlines around the world. The G7, a group of the world's largest advanced economies, often discusses big-picture ideas that could reshape global finance. This time, their focus turned to the ultra-wealthy and how their fortunes might be taxed to address growing inequality and fund public needs. According to a detailed report, a 2% annual wealth tax on individuals with fortunes exceeding $100 million across all G7 countries could generate an estimated $214 billion every year. This figure is based on the combined wealth of the richest people in these nations, and it's meant to illustrate the potential impact of such a policy if it were ever put into practice. However, it's important to understand that this is just a theoretical idea at this stage, a proposal, not a law. No G7 country has formally agreed to implement this tax, and the details remain under debate. If such a tax were ever enacted, the United States would be expected to collect the lion's share, about $161 billion, because it's home to the majority of the world's ultra-wealthy individuals. This highlights how unevenly distributed extreme wealth is, even among the richest countries. But the idea is far from becoming reality. There's no agreement among G7 nations, and the proposal faces significant political and practical obstacles. Some leaders are skeptical, while others worry about the impact on investment and economic growth. In fact, the debate has sparked controversy both within and outside the G7, with critics arguing over the feasibility and fairness of such a tax. Despite some claims, the narrative that this is a Canadian-led effort to target the US is completely backward. Canada is just one voice among many, and the proposal is multinational in scope. In reality, what started as a broad, multinational tax idea has sometimes been misrepresented as a Canadian trade maneuver, distorting the original intent of the proposal. This is yet another example of how real numbers and policy discussions can be twisted and reassembled into misleading or even false stories, especially in the fast-moving world of international politics. Ultimately, the reality is far more nuanced, a complex, ongoing debate about tax fairness, global inequality, and the best ways to fund public goods, rather than a simple case of economic aggression or national rivalry. When we compare Canadian and US economic initiatives, we see shared goals, not conflict. Ontario's budget mirrors US state and federal spending on healthcare and infrastructure. Both countries are investing in technology and modernizing their economies. The $214 billion data center market benefits both nations, with tech companies operating on both sides of the border. While policies differ, like Canada's single-payer healthcare, their economies are deeply intertwined, with $2 billion in goods and services crossing the border daily. The idea of a $214 billion deal stealing US partners ignores this integration. The real story is one of cooperation and mutual benefit. Disputes arise, but overall the relationship is about partnership. Canada's economic moves complement, not undermine, US interests. While the $214 billion trade deal is fiction, real US-Canada trade tensions are very much a reality. The relationship between these two neighboring countries is often friendly, but it's also marked by complex negotiations and occasional disputes that can have real economic consequences for millions of people on both sides of the border. One major issue at the center of current tensions is Canada's proposed digital services tax. This tax is designed to target revenue generated by global tech giants, many of which are headquartered in the United States. The goal is to ensure that these massive companies pay their fair share of taxes in countries where they do significant business, even if they don't have a physical presence there. Canada argues that the tax is about fairness and modernizing the tax system for the digital age. However, the US government sees it as unfairly targeting American companies, calling it discriminatory and threatening to retaliate if the tax is implemented. This dispute has already led to diplomatic friction, with both sides exchanging sharp words. The US has threatened to impose tariffs on Canadian goods, and there have even been moments when trade talks were paused or slowed down as a result of the disagreement. And it's not just a North American issue. Similar digital taxes are being debated and implemented in countries around the world, from Europe to Asia. These new policies are making international relations more complicated, as governments try to balance fair taxation with the interests of their own economies and global tech companies. These are real policy disagreements, with financial stakes in the millions or low billions of dollars, not the hundreds of billions that some rumors suggest. The outcomes of these debates can affect tech companies, governments, and consumers alike. In this environment, it's easy for genuine disputes to be exaggerated or misrepresented online, making sensational rumors seem more believable than they really are. Social media and viral headlines can quickly blur the line between fact and fiction. That's why it's crucial to separate real issues from viral myths. Careful fact-checking and critical thinking are essential to understanding what's actually happening in these high-stakes international debates. The digital tax debate is undeniably complex. involving questions of fairness, sovereignty, and the future of the global economy. But one thing is clear, it's not a secret $214 billion plot. It's a real ongoing policy challenge that will shape the future of international trade. The $214 billion Canada story is a case study in modern misinformation. A single number pulled from 3 unrelated contexts became a viral tale of betrayal. This shows why it's vital to question headlines and check sources, especially when stories provoke strong emotions. Algorithms amplify what we're likely to share, making falsehoods spread faster than corrections. Media literacy is essential. Ask who's reporting, check sources, and look for context. The truth is less dramatic but far more reassuring. There's no secret economic war, just 2 allies navigating a complex world. By seeking context, we protect ourselves from sensationalism and division. Keeping the facts straight is our best defense.